Hey everybody, this is Sherry, and I'm using a layering stamp set from Hampton Arts for my first video as a member of the Honey Bunnies Treasures design team. And I will make sure that I put a link in the description box for all of the things that I use that you can find at their store. And she's got some really great stamp sets and dies, so I would definitely encourage you to go and check out the store, and which of course will be linked in the description box. Now what I'm doing here is I just I stamped my flower and then I masked it with some full sheet post-it so that I could be able to put my leaves on, because I wanted them to appear as if they were behind the flower. So anything that you want to be in front when you have to layer stamps, you stamp it the furthest closest to you first, and then you work your way back to what would be behind. Now, I am absolutely no watercolor expert. As a matter of fact, this is the third project I've done with watercolor, and I believe this is probably the first one that you guys have seen me do. Um, I've wanted to learn how to watercolor forever, and my daughter is an art therapy major, and so I asked her to teach me, and boy, has she had her hands full. And so what I did was I started by putting a layer of water over top of the entire flower. I didn't put any water on the leaves, just on the flower. And because this layer is supposed to be my highlight layer, I'm trying to keep it as light as possible, which you can see I continually use my towel to dab it off and make it lighter. I'm learning to make sure that if I want it lighter, to just add more water. But I'm getting there. I'm not there at this video, but I'm getting there, I promise you. And so I'm just going ahead and I'm putting in, the first layer. And now this is the second layer. This would be my midtones. And what I do is I add in the color that I want, where I think it would be darker, where there would be a shadow. And then I just go over it with some water to kind of blend that shadow out so there's no harsh lines. And that's what I'm doing, for this layer. And I'm going to be brutally honest, folks. Okay, I have a brain tumor, so I forget things, all right? I'll give you that. But just for anybody in general, I know I'm not the only person in the world who forgets things. So, you really have to pay attention to which leaf you're coloring, because sometimes they're very close and you're like, did I color that one? And I asked my daughter, I'm like, how are you supposed to remember? How can you tell? And she's like, Mom, you have to pay attention. I'm like, oh. I said, I didn't realize that. So what I've had to do, if I stop in the middle of coloring on a particular layer, is I have to write down somewhere where I was. Or sometimes if my highlight, my midtone isn't quite as dark as it should have been or whatever, I forget and go back over it. But I mean, from what I've understood, there's just really not a whole lot you can do to mess up watercolor, and or at least that's what my daughter tells me. So that's what we're doing here. And just going back over and adding the rest of the layers and making sure that I've got everything the way I want it. And the inside was a little bit trickier because there wasn't quite as much space to work. Now, when I'm laying down my shadows on these ones, I try to do petals that are not touching. That way I can put in my water and then add my color, and it won't bleed into the other petal. So I definitely used my heat gun through a lot of this, but I just cut that out because I didn't figure y'all wanted to see me drying my paper. Now this is the final layer, and this is where I go in and I try to intensify any shadows that I think need to be there, and that maybe I didn't get as dark on the first or second layer, because I guess, now see here you can say, I guess, part of watercoloring is that you layer in your colors. It's, you know, it's not like Copics where you do it, you put down the 3 colors and you're done. This one you have to start with your lightest and then let that dry and then go back to your mid-tone and do that and let that dry. And then you go back and do your base shadows and you let that dry. And you know, I'm one who, oh, there's a petal, let me smack my colors down, and I thought I should be done. So I really struggled with it. But I do like how it turns out in the end. Now, this is a layering stamp set, and which means you could just use different colored inks and you do not have to watercolor it. If you have, you know, if you're not comfortable with coloring, and you know, you can do that instead of coloring. You don't have to with this stamp set, which is one of the things that makes it awesome. In the event that, you know, oh, I need to do a quick card, and watercoloring is definitely not a quick process. So all I'd have to do is use a couple, well, you can actually do it with one, but do it with a couple different colors of ink and you're good to go. And you've got a beautiful card with beautiful flowers, and everybody's like, "Ooh, look what you did." And you're like, "Uh-huh, I worked hard." You know, let me make myself look good a little bit more. And I went and I mixed some colors, and that is a inexpensive color set that I got from Michael's, and I really only used it for this project and one other, and then I switched and purchased the Karatake Gonzai Tombi watercolors. So, I mean, you use whatever you have, and that's what makes this, you know, so great. Now, here I'm using a duster that I purchased, and I'm using Stormy Skies Distress ink. I'm going to be bluntly honest, I would not recommend that. It's, you know, I understand the brushes to be soft and put on a very pale detail, and that felt like a stippling brush. It just hard, you know, nothing soft about it, stippling brush. And so I was not happy with it, and I will probably not ever use them again. I'm going to try to, I want to be able to do that, so I'm going to be looking for different brushes to try. And I just went over the outside or the line to give me a nice strong outline around the flower. And then I used a die from my stash to die cut a sentiment for the card base, or for the card. Now here I'm just going to cut everything down to the size that I want. Now this was a half sheet of this 5x7 watercolor paper. I forgot what I was using. So it's a half a sheet of that. So I just trimmed it down to, you know, get anything off the edges that I didn't want. And my red there is an A2 size Recollections 110-pound cardstock. And I'm using my ATG gun, which she carries ATG tape at HoneyBunnies Treasures if you need refills. So that's great to always know where you can go and get more, because I go through that stuff like water. So my black layer was 4 by 5 1/4, and this one is 3 1/2 by 4 7/8. So it's got a bigger border around it than what I normally do. But I'm kind of working where it's not just having to be 1/4 inch increments. And if you notice, I took the inside of that black paper has my die cut and out of it, and I would normally never do that. But because that watercolor paper is so thick, I knew that nobody would have a clue, and it saved me paper. So I was all for it. And now I'm just trying to put down everything where I want it to go and make sure I got it right. Now I'm using my art glitter glue, which she also carries at HoneyBunnies Treasures. And guys, I love this glue. I can't say enough great things about this glue. So if you are looking to try some, I will definitely have the link, and go check it out because you will be happy you did. It's awesome. All right, and I'm just finishing up here, and this is it. That's my card. and praying for you. And I hope you guys like this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. And remember, everything will be linked below in the description. Thanks for visiting me today, and happy crafting. Bye.